I'm starting on the interior stuff. I ripped out all the automatic parts here. I did the wiring mods for the automatic shifter to keep the ignition working and the reverse lights. Now I'm going to basically modify this ECU plate so that the new P28 ECU he got will mount to it. Here's the P28 mounted to the factory plate. Just cut these off the factory one and moved them. Also had to shorten a little bit. Alright, here's the shifter we're going to be using. This is originally a 90 to 93 Accord shifter, and I basically cut out the base and made my own mounting spot, mounting base to made up of the stock mount holes. The reason the 90 to 93 Accord shifters are the best ones to use is because this whole section is sealed off. If you're using like a 4G Prelude one, this is open, so it's harder to seal against the bottom of the car. Problem with these is this hits around here, so I gotta clearance this so this will bolt flush. Then to seal it, you just use some foam around this or around the hole, and that keeps it all sealed. In addition to that, the owner wants like a better shifter feel, so like the 4th Gen Prelude cables, I'm gonna cut off the rubber ends and use rod ends instead for the inside of the car. And on the trans side, we're just gonna install the hybrid racing drop-in ones. There's the hole cut or enlarged. And I'm just gonna put some few coats of primer around it. And all I did was I drilled some holes and used tin snips and kind of smoothed it out. It's kind of hard to work in here. And to seal it up against the bottom of the shifter, you can use either stuff like this from the hardware store. I think this is oh yeah, here we go. It's general weather seal, or I get blocks of foam like this with adhesive on one side, and I just cut it basically to go around the hole. And it's a little bit harder to install, but if you use thicker stuff like this, once you bolt it down, you get a lot of squeeze and you get a really tight seal. So to make the new cable ends on the interior, I'm going to weld this onto this bolt head, and that bolt will thread into the 8mm rod end. And then for the cable itself, I'm going to cut it off, thread it, and then this will screw it onto the cable. And I'll have a little jam nut. Alright, yeah, shifter setup feels pretty good. It's not quite like S2000 level, but it's pretty good for cables. Alright, I got the trans painted. Now I'm going to start on refreshing the engine. Alright, I've got it mostly torn down. Doesn't look too bad. Well, this is no good. This is the timing side thrust washer. That's fine, but here's the other one. Totally chewed up. These grooves are supposed to be on this one, but they're totally gone. And unfortunately, the crank is also damaged. That thrust washer was. And if you were to put a good one in, it just doesn't even seat correctly. And on top of that, the rod bearings are on their last legs. They're not chewed up yet, but I can see they're pitting. This engine wouldn't have lasted very long. They just tried to run it. A little bit of scoring on the pistons, but not too bad. That could probably be cleaned up. Main bearings are fine. Not much wear. At least some good news is everything in the head was fine. It actually looks pretty good. So I'm contacting the owner to see what he wants to do.
3 weeks later.
Used crank arrived. Try to fit this. Hopefully all the bearing clearances are still good. I got the head stripped down. I was just gonna pop the new valve stem seals in. Unfortunately, I'm seeing down in these areas it's like a gray sludge. I think that's from the crank down in there too, from the thrust surface on the crank, because this sludge is slightly magnetic. So I'm gonna have to go even further and pop out all the oil passage plugs, basically flush everything out, make sure it's all clean. Alright, for the speed sensor, it looks like just the stock complete 88, 89 will drop in. Obviously the hold down is over here, and there's just enough clearance for the hoses, and I think the shifter, it'll clear the shifter cables too. So all I gotta do is make a little bracket that comes from here over the top of this just to hold it down. It doesn't really need to be held down very hard. I just got everything back from powder coat. I'm going to install the subframe first and get the engine up in there. Then I'll do the front subframe and then the cross member, all that. Alright, I got it mounted, hopefully for the last time. That's looking good in my opinion. Went with new zinc, yellow zinc hardware. You can see the speed sensor, looks like everything's going to clear, at least down here. This still clears there. It's a little bit tight, but that'll be okay. We'll get the hoses to those. The only question is I gotta fit the manifold, see how this is gonna go. I mean, it would be nice to go maybe behind it or under it, so this isn't as visible, but we'll see. I might have to go over top and tuck it over here. Got the hybrid racing stuff in here. And so what we're going to do for AC is, when I was taking the system apart, someone had been in here before and they over tightened everything, and they just, you can see like this one started to crack. The threads were it's all cross threaded. I tried this one, it's doing the same thing. So I'm going to assume others are going to do the same as well. So what's going to happen is this whole system is going to come out, and I'm going to put the system from my old H22 swap into here. So I'll have the custom the condenser with the built-in dryer, so you get rid of this whole setup over here, and then the soft lines that'll tuck low, go behind, then come up to the AC, to the evaporator. I think that's gonna be what I do next, because that needs to go in before I start putting all the other stuff on that goes above it. Alright, the AC system is in. I just pulled vacuum on it for about half an hour and let it sit overnight, see if it holds. So I need to clean up some of the, actually mount the hoses, but it's all sealed. I tried to fit the stock fan here, but it's kind of hitting this and it would take too much trimming to actually make it fit. So over here is going to be a slim fan. This side will still be a stock fan. And next thing I'm going to do is powder coat this in the power steering bracket, because they're both pretty rusty. Once those are in, I'll do the final install on the upper portion of the header and then get the rest of the exhaust in. Alright, here's the exhaust and header on for the final time, hopefully. Alright, it's coming along. I'm almost done over here. I'm just waiting on an alternator. Once that, I'll be able to put that in, then finish up the power steering. Pretty much got all the hoses figured out. Just waiting on some new clamps. And that'll be done. Here's a slim fan. Good amount of room here. The manifold, I still need to plug some holes on that, add a fitting for the brake booster, do a few little things like that. Then that'll go on. That'll probably be the last thing to go on. And I just got the clutch system all tightened up and bled. And this is a braid line for a 4th gen Prelude, but it's pretty long, so I had to actually go around the booster, then come down. Alright, the next big thing that needs to be done on this car is the owner bought an airbox for a 5th gen Prelude, which should fit here, but I need to relocate the fuse box and remove the bracket that it bolts to. And on the 3rd gen Prelude, you can't really unplug from the back of the box. It's pretty much a permanent install, so you have to actually go all the way into the car, unplug all the bulkhead connectors and pull it all through. So next step, I'll do that, and the plan right now is to mount it maybe up here somewhere, like on a cord or something. I don't know for sure. If it's not going to go there, probably have to go in the interior somewhere. Alright, the harness is almost ready to come out. It's just that, and then this spot, I know I'm going to have to extend this anyways. So, and there's wires with the same colors, multiple wires. So I'm going to label the wires on each end, then make cuts kind of randomly. So when I splice it back, when I put splices, it won't be too bulky. I just mounted the intake box. So yeah, I had to trim like the mounts off it, and because of how tight it is in here, these things, you can't actually unclip it while it's in place. So what I'm doing is I'm having just a bracket off the side. So you just take that off, you can pull this out, then change the filter if you need. It's pretty tight. Now I gotta try to fit the tube, or see how the tubes are gonna fit. Yeah, socket intake isn't really going to work. It's much too long. And because you got an oversized or a 68mm throttle body, this doesn't actually fit on it anyways. So, I mean, what's as stock looking as possible. So I think I'm gonna kind of do it half and half. Like I'll cut it somewhere in here, and just have like a stainless tube that matches up to the throttle body. Then I'll make the tube black, and that should keep it kind of stock looking. Alright, before I can do a final install of the manifold, I need to modify it in a few ways. One, he's got a larger throttle body, so I actually need to get in there and open all that up. This and this need to be removed and plugged. This isn't used, and this is the brake booster, but it's kind of it's not clean being on top like that. And Roscoe, he normally puts one in there for the brake booster, but that still require a longer hose. So I think what I'm going to do is kind of underneath, I'll weld on a little bit extra material and put this in like that. And then I'll let the stock hose reach. I also need to tap and plug these little holes. And he's got an EGR block-off plate, an IACV adapter. And then once I get all that set up, I think the final step is I'm gonna sandblast this in Cerakote silver, because the oxidation is pretty heavy. I don't think I can really clean it up any other way and make it look good. It's getting close now. I got the whole fuel system in. Just replaced the return line because the stock one is a little bit too big for this regulator. And we sent out the injectors to get cleaned, so those should be good. There's a stock 3rd gen line, and I just kind of bent this and tweaked this so it came off and went down. And here's a new valve cover for the new powder coat anyways. Got this PCV valve relocator. Got it for hood clearance, but I might have been able to sneak this one in, but this is just kind of looks cool, and it makes sure there's maybe plenty of clearance. So trying to figure out the intake. I did do the original rubber piece with a stainless 90, but it just didn't look right. So what we're gonna do is just do the whole thing in stainless, then powder coat it in a black wrinkle, so it'll look kind of stockish. That's where the fuse box will live. And the last thing after that is I gotta mount the battery down in here.
Three weeks later.
But okay, I finally got it working. It's working now. And one other problem with the harness, I thought most of the problem was just in the expansion harness. I also found that they had the alternator plug wired wrong, so it wasn't charging. So I had to swap some pins on that. After all that, I got it running now, and it seems to run fine. There's just one little thing I gotta hook up, which is the oil pressure warning light. That's not working, and it does run through that plug, so I still gotta figure that out. Other than that, got the intake pretty much done. Got the power steering system hooked up. That's working well. I've run it and idled it for a while. There's no leaks or anything that I can see so far, although it's not really a proper test without actually driving it on the road. I ran it with the wheels up off the ground through all the gears. That seemed to work fine. So I just gotta finish up some stuff and I'll be able to start buttoning it up.